Okay, this video is probably going to get me a lot of controversy, but I think now the last few days I've watched a few documentaries on match fixing because I was literally I watch some of the sports channels that I follow on YouTube and they will have recommended videos for you. I also watch documentary channels as well, especially on crime documentaries. So on my recommended views list, match fixing came up, which links me to what I'm going to discuss. I got a lot of views on my Rugby League World Cup videos this autumn, or spring if you're in Australia, New Zealand. And one match stands out to me as having a possible suspicious note to it. At the time, I was obviously I'm in England. I'm an Englishman, well, a Brit. So a British side is playing. I want to see us do well. The England side was an average side that got to a final, but hard work does take you a long way, even if the talent's missing. England Tonga, Rugby League World Cup semi-final. That refereeing season by Checcin. Now, referees have a hard job. If that's the NRL, there's a second referee on the pitch, and it probably does get referred upstairs. It probably does, unless there's been some severe foul play in the build-up. It goes upstairs. That was a group game, goes upstairs. If that is just a standard Super League or NRL game, goes upstairs. Auckland Nines, whatever you want to call it, any standard club game or warm-up international friendly, it goes upstairs. So that decision. At the time, I was a bit filthy for Tonga. I actually felt sorry for them because even if they weren't awarded the try, it should have gone upstairs, and then the decision is made. It doesn't. It's kind of obvious that actually looking back on it, yeah, that was a try because the ball was stripped 1-on-1. At which point, it's not classed as a knock-on then, unless the Tonga player suddenly flails an arm at it, which he didn't. Andrew Fita did not flail his arm at it. It was stripped from him. The England player has got his arm in. It could have been classed as an illegal strip and possibly a penalty try because he wasn't close enough to the try line. So there's various rule permutations. It may not have been given because they could have classed it as a knock-on, which, again, 50-50. So I'm not angry about that. Thing is, the Tonga players scream at the referee, go upstairs, check it. That's a strip. The England players' reaction is like, shit, he scored. And I'm saying that, shit, he scored, I really shouldn't swear, but you can tell by the England players' reaction, oh, he scored there, we've possibly blown this, and they're panicking, going, don't go upstairs. So the players know. The ref doesn't. Final whistle, game's done. England get through. The relief on their faces is there to see. Forget the previous 79 minutes now that we were 20-0 up and it's gone down to that. Forget that. Forget that Tonga scored 18 points in 7 minutes. Forget that. You want to focus on 30 seconds. At the time, yeah, I was angry. But now I'm watching a couple of these documentaries, especially Declan Hill explaining how match fixing works. He didn't go on how spot fixing works, and that could be a spot and a match fix. Both in one. England have got to win by a minimum of 2 points. But you've got to give a controversial decision in the last 30 seconds. That's a spot and a match fix all in one. A spot fix is where a specific incident in a match between minute 1 and final whistle, or in a tennis match, cricket match, which is 5 days, a bowler bowls or no ball. That's a spot fix. If he's been asked to do it on his fourth over, first ball of his fourth over of his first spell, bowl or no ball. Pakistan have been known to do this for years. Allegations and have been proven when they've admitted it in a court of law as well and have gone to prison or got banned. So there is that. Look at Salman Butt, former Pakistan captain, now sort of banned for life. So it's there. It's known about. Match fixing is when the whole game has to have a standard result and it's thrown, whereby a team deliberately loses or both teams agree that one side wins, or it's a very interesting draw. If you look back in the 1978 World Cup, Germany, what was West Germany versus Austria, it is a 1-1 draw. You can tell both sides are not really trying. A draw serves them both well, they both go through to the next round at the time. That is a well-known example of a possible, it's 82. West Germany, Austria, they're just. And the Algerian fans are filthy. They are filthy. That is an example of a possible match fix that never got proven, but is highly likely. So I'm now asking the question, was the England-Tonga game fixed? Was it? I don't care that England won or Tonga lost. I don't care about that. I care about that 30 seconds at the time compared to now. Having a month and a half to look back on that, it's looking more and more likely it's a suspicious result. Linking in, same sport, Rugby League, Manly are now being investigated for breaching the salary cap for the last 5 years. The reason why that has come about is someone, because there's an anonymous hotline that players, coaches and fans and those involved with the game can phone. In any sport in Australia, there's a dedicated police unit. integrity unit. And there's an NRL, an AFL, and every sport's got an integrity unit in Australia that is linked into this police unit. Someone phoned anonymously saying there's some possible suspicious results here. Several games, all involving Manly Sea Eagles. Whether they won or lost, there were some suspicious refereeing performances and playing performances, and results were a bit... And actually, because betting is legal in Australia, some suspicious betting patterns. So someone's gone anonymously to this hotline via the various bodies in place, and has basically said something's off here. So the police get involved. Australia is the only country with a dedicated police force. And they investigate Manly Sea Eagles. I did a video on it, on the salary cap breach. They don't find enough evidence. They found evidence, not enough evidence to be certain of gaining a prosecution or extending the case further and wider. But there was evidence there. This is the statement that was given when Manly are now under investigation for salary cap breach. The police could not find enough. There's evidence, but not enough. Which is a very striking statement that the NRL have given. Todd Greenberg gave this statement, the police commissioner gave this statement. Statements have been made to that effect saying there wasn't enough. So there is evidence, possible evidence there, be it coincidental, that there is fixing involved at Manly Sea Eagles. But Soswell states they're on an investigation for salary cap breach, so hey, calm as a bitch. So that's an example in a sport. But it is worrying, and I am concerned because watching these documentaries, Declan Hill especially goes into depth of how vulnerable certain leagues and countries are to not just the odd match fix, because it happens in every sport. There's been match fixing going back 40, 50, 60 years. There's been a historic baseball match fix. I think it was the Red Sox or Blues, Black Sox, or a baseball team deliberately, and it was a big scandal back in the 1900s. It's been the English match fix in the 1960s, just before we had the World Cup football. Anthony Cronje and the famous cricket match fixing scandal that ultimately cost him his life, people believe, because he died very suspiciously in an aircraft crash. So there are some examples out there of people being found guilty. But we are exceptionally vulnerable, because in large parts of Asia it is illegal to gamble. Now we can talk about the corruption of various governing sporting bodies and how corrupt they are. And certain leagues do have an issue with match fixing and corruption, especially in Italian, Turkish and Greek football as prime examples. But the fact that Australia is the only country with a dedicated police unit for this kind of thing, because there is links to organised crime, is worrying. And the fact that a World Cup on Australian soil has a suspicious game in it, and it's not the only suspicious decision, but it's the most glaringly obvious one. And anyone who watched any of the other games can comment, there was something dodgy about that decision, there was something dodgy about not referring, or this scoreline, or whatever. And people could question the New Zealand results. They could question New Zealand, Fiji, they could question Tonga, New Zealand as well. New Zealand's results could be questioned. Scotland, Samoa could be questioned because Scotland was so bad that they suddenly get a draw without three of their best players who have now been thrown out for drinking too much. Again, certain results I do question. I do. At the time, it's a tournament. There's going to be injuries, suspensions. Players are going to adapt to conditions well. But looking back on certain of those results, especially in the New Zealand side of the draw, I have questions. I really do. I also question the choice of referee for the final being an Australian when it should have been Henry Perinara, who's a New Zealander, who's a neutral ref. So again, I have questions. I'm not saying the match was fixed, but hey, I have questions. Was it? And I know I'm going to get, interesting feedback from this. And I'm not expecting it all to be positive. Hell no. Absolutely not. I expect to have a debate on this channel. Because there is no way, knowing what I now know, and what I've learned by watching an expert be on documentaries, be interviewed, and watch those interviews and those documentaries that he's been part of when questions have been asked to him about match fixing, spot fixing, and how it comes about, and how even in Canada, soccer is not a major sport, but that's getting fixed at a very low level. That's worrying. When you've got 15-year-olds playing in minor league tournaments, youth tournaments, and the matches are being fixed or spot fixed, it's worrying. So, there are some issues. And yet, Australia is 10 years ahead of every other major nation when it comes to sport and defending it against match fixing. We do have legalised gambling in this country. So illegal gambling, it's really hard to get a foothold because the legal gambling is so well regulated, and if there's any suspicious betting patterns, there've been a couple of snooker players done for match fixing or spot fixing, and they have been banned, or betting offences. Stuart Bingham, Stephen Lee, Higgins and Maguire have both been under investigation. When they notice suspicious betting patterns on games, they're flagged, red flag straight away, and the authorities are phoned. The problem is each police force doesn't have a dedicated. It will go to the City of Westminster Police Fraud Department, which is not dedicated solely to match fixing. It is dedicated to all financial crimes. So their expertise is spread out wide because all these officers have to be focusing on every fraud crime in the country, assisting other police forces. And City of Westminster Police is a very small police force compared to the Metropolitan Police, Thames Valley, Greater Manchester. It's a tiny police force. They're the biggest three. They dwarf it in size. One of their police stations is almost half the size. One of the big police stations, let's say Thames Valley, is half the size of City of Westminster Police. That is how small their police force is. So, but let's go back to the question at hand. Was that game fixed? Was there a spot fix or a match fix? I can't prove it, but someone can. If enough people raise that question, and there were questions raised that there could have been a match fix at the time. And I just thought, that's a spit of Tongan fans. That's a spit of fans. Their team lost a very controversial last-minute decision. But now I understand why people were going, that's a match fix. There was a member of the New Zealand media who said that could be a possible match fix. 2 days after the game, it was on New Zealand TV. I watched the YouTube clip where someone has posted it on a channel to do with the result. Yeah, I actually can see some validity in that fact. We've got to look at betting patterns. Legal betting patterns are a good way to see if there's actually a match fix in progress, because you can bet now on spot fix, a spot bet. So certain websites, and I'm not going to mention them in this country because I'll probably get sued because I haven't got permission, but certain betting companies in this country allow you to bet whilst in play. And they give you odds, and you can cash out at any time. It's all regulated, it's all legal, and you can bet on how many yellow cards, how many penalties, how many free kicks, how many conversions, how many tries, how many penalty kicks a goal, how many scrums in union and league, how many tackles a player will make. You can bet on, you can actually bet on, besides I'm saying, how many times the TV video ref is used. You can. You can bet on anything. Will a try be disallowed? You can bet on anything. How many metres a player, how many carries will the player have, how many hit-up. You can bet on these things. And there are one or two websites where you can actually see how much money is going on each game or each sport. You really can. Which again, if there's suddenly a sudden surge of money for an incident to happen between minute 75 and 80 in a rugby league or rugby union game, and there's a surge of betting in that game, that's a red flag. That's a suspicious betting pattern. If the game has been steady, right before the game starts and during play, if there's a steady like this and spikes or drops, you know something is very up. If there's a surge of interest or suddenly interest drops off suddenly and then peaks again, you know there is some kind of bet against this, don't bet on this, or bet on that. That's a red flag. So we have that in this country where then suddenly the betting companies will suddenly, all of them will go, we have a red flag on this game. And if more than one betting company goes, we have a red flag on this game, if there's a series of them going to the Gaming Commission going, we have an issue here, we're not happy about something. If more than one betting company puts a red flag up, then you know there is something wrong. So I'll be very, very interested to see the legal betting side. The illegal betting is hard to determine how much money's in it. It's up to 1.7 trillion US dollars. The legal betting, they've calculated at around 90 billion turnover. So it's difficult to calculate. And this is the journalist Checcin Hill. He does a very, very, very good little example of how it works. He does a very good presentation on it. And I've watched several documentaries and interviews and talks that he's done online. I have watched them, and they are exceptionally interesting and very in-depth. And he's a very interesting man to listen to. And in the space of 2 days, I've learnt a fair bit more about match fixing, spot fixing than I did before. I knew it happened and I know the basics of it, but how in depth he went without confusing the viewer and the examples he used were brilliant. He actually used very simple examples. It is really shocking. Tennis especially. There's all sorts in tennis. I could go, that's a bit questionable, that's a bit questionable. So certain players I'm questioning if they're trying. Nick Kyrgios, for example. As an example, he's constantly throwing games or walking off games when you could have a bet saying you could have a bet, will he survive the game? Will he behave himself? That could be an interesting match fix if he actually keeps his cool and actually plays out a game. That could be, that you can bet on that. You can bet if Nick Kyrgios will have a strop and not complete a game. You could probably bet on that on a legal betting site. No, I'm not joking. But I've raised a lot of questions. I don't want to put people off sport, but there are some severe issues out there, and we are exceptionally open and vulnerable. If Australia is the only country that's years ahead of everyone else when it comes to sorting out this problem, and a World Cup on Australian soil has that kind of scandal involved, that's, to me, it looks kind of obvious that there's a couple of decisions, especially that one, where I have concerns. I really do. And it's always on the New Zealand side of the draw as well. It is on the Kiwi side of the draw that all these up to the semi-final. There's a few games where results I actually am questioning. England Australia, you knew they were going to be tight, physical, brutal games, and the final I was really impressed with how England, with injuries, played and fought. The first game, okay, it's the first game of the tournament. You got to work your way into it. The New Zealand side of the draw, the Kiwi side of the draw, I have some questions. How can the second or third best team in the world be that bad? How can the team in Scotland that, yes, admittedly they played in Workington, be that bad against a weaker team? I mean, they were both similar strength teams. How can Scotland be that bad? How can Tonga be robbed like that? How can Fiji win such a close quarter-final by just 2 points when tries were disallowed? How can something... If the whole tournament was like that and try scoring was down and they were all very close, tight, nitty-gritty games, I could get the 4-2. But at this level of rugby league, and with the way try scoring has been and how it is harder to defend and it's really great attacking play and they're all players around athletes, I'm very interested in that 4-2 and the 18-20 as well. But that's just me. I don't want to knock people's view on rugby league. I thought it was a brilliant tournament. But now, watching a few videos and reading a few articles, to looking back at what I reviewed, why did I question it more? I mentioned there could be a fix in there, as people were mentioning this online and on TV and in the print media. And I was like, okay, there's a few bitter fans out there, and I had some comments on my videos going, we should have won, we were robbed. But now looking back at their anger, the fans' anger, they were possibly right. I'm not saying it did happen, but that is a big what if in my mind. And look, this video is only 20 minutes. I do not expect anyone to watch all the way to the end. I really don't. But thank you very much for watching. It's a very difficult topic to talk about. Please like and subscribe, place your comments below, and I'll have some more videos for you soon.